it's Mike Langford. Welcome to another episode of the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. On this episode of the show, Adam Nash, the co-founder and CEO of Daffy, is with me. Now, Daffy stands for Donor Advised Fund for You. So as you might imagine, we're going to be diving deep into donor advised funds and topics related to charitable giving, a bit of tax planning and estate planning, and frankly, creating opportunities for your clients and their families to make the kind of meaningful impact they want on the world. This is powerful stuff, and Adam knows a thing or two about making an impact on the world. He's the former CEO of Wealthfront, which certainly made a big dent on our industry. Okay, before we get to the conversation with Adam, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon, the YouTubes, or wherever you like to get your podcast jam on. And if you have a question or a suggestion for a topic or a guest, hit me up. I'm basically at Mike Langford everywhere on the internet, or you can just shoot us an email, podcast@finservmarketing.com. All right, let's get to it with Adam Nash. Well, Adam Nash, so great to see you. Welcome to the Modern Financial Advisor podcast.
Oh yeah, Mike. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
It's awesome. It's so wild when you're like you're kind of aware of someone's work that they've done before, never met the person, and then somebody sends you over an intro. And you're like, this is awesome. I can't wait to dive into this. So you're working on some stuff that I'm like, I can't believe more innovation hasn't happened here in the donor advised fund area. So I'm always thrilled. I've been in this industry now for, it is year 30 this year, even though I look dramatically older, and you can nod along saying, yes, you do, but dramatically younger. But it's just wild. I've seen so much stuff over the years, and every time you see something new and innovative, I love to talk to the people involved. So I'm thrilled to have you on the show.
Oh, listen, Mike, I love it as well. And I'm usually known as a technology optimist. My whole career, I've been working in technology, et cetera. But as much as we've gotten done in the last 20, 30 years, there's so much left to do. And so it is exciting to always be building new features and new platforms.
I agree. So let's dive into it. Donor advisor funds have been around for a while. And I imagine most of the financial advisors and wealth management executives who are tuning in to watch or listen to this show are at least aware of their existence. And I assume some, or a reasonable percentage, if you will, are likely using donor advised funds as part of their clients' financial plans. But as I think about you, this technologist who's just kind of loves this stuff, what was it that you saw that either made you think like donor advised funds are broken and I'm the dude to fix them, or donor advised funds are tremendously underutilized and they need some innovation and a little bit of sunlight to achieve their true potential? Or maybe it's a combination of both. So what did you see?
Yeah, I think it is a combination of both. I mean, as you mentioned, the donor advised fund has been around for a surprisingly long time. Most people are surprised to hear that the first donor advised funds in the US go back to the 1930s, right? They've been around for a while. But it's really become more of a popular topic in the last, I'd say, 20, maybe 30 years. I think Fidelity Charitable launched before the 2000, like in the 80s. But it really hasn't been very long that advisors have been talking about it. And most advisors come to it from this tax perspective, right? Like it really is a phenomenal piece of financial advice, right? If you give to charity regularly, there are so many advantages to putting money aside or using, stock or other appreciated assets that, advisors can be real heroes to their clients by giving them this better option. For me personally, though, I thought it was a great financial product, but I was really curious why so few people had heard about it, right? It's not like tax advantaged accounts are some sort of new idea. People talk about retirement accounts, 529 plans came out for college savings. And let's be honest, there's 60 million or so households in the US every year who give to charity. So it's not like there isn't a broad-based need for this type of product or service. But it wasn't until I actually talked to people across the country about their giving. About 4 years ago, I was doing research for what became Daffy, where it really hit me that a lot of people have the intention to give to charity, but they don't get around to it. They give when they're asked, but they don't really plan for it. And it made me realize, this is basic behavioral finance. This is, financial advice 101, which is, make a list of your financial goals and
Yeah.
set money aside for them if they're important to you. And giving is important to people, but people weren't setting money aside for that goal, right? They had a financial goal. They might be saving for retirement. They might
Yeah.
be saving for their kids' education, but they didn't have a goal. They had nothing in their budget
Yeah.
for giving to charity. And I said, I've seen this problem before, right? This is like any other financial goal. We'll make an explicit goal. We'll set up a plan to do it. We'll automate it so that people, actually follow through on it. And by the way, where should you put that money? The donor advised fund.
Yeah.
Obviously the right place from a regulatory standpoint to put money set aside for charity. And so that's actually how I got into this. I became this advocate now, and now I'm busy telling people that, if, not everyone gives to charity every year, but if you do, one, you should have a goal for your giving, right? And two, you should have a donor advised fund and be putting money aside for charity so it's there when you need it.
You know what's so funny about just the way you walked through that story and kind of your aha moment, if you will, or aha journey, let's call it that. It wasn't really necessarily a moment, but it's like so many other things. It's like, hey, this stuff's been around for a while. Just nobody's putting the right light on it and innovated the delivery mechanism of the thing. And sometimes that makes all the difference in the world, right? It's like you said, like, Fidelity's charitable gift funds and have been around for a while and so forth. But you just don't hear advisors talking about this. I mean, I've been to like a lot of financial advisor conferences, and this doesn't come up that often.
No, it doesn't. Although I will say that in the grand scheme of things, there are
Yeah.
very few people who understand what a donor advised fund is. And I
Yeah.
think financial advisors, more than almost any other profession,
Yeah.
maybe accountants will give you a run for your money.
Yeah.
They immediately realize the value of this financial product and how useful it is to have this tax-free account for giving to charity. But you're right. It's amazing. This is true in all financial advice, right? It's about framing. I mean, a lot of our worst enemies when it comes to living a healthy financial life has to do with psychology. The things we want to talk about, the things we don't want to talk about, the decisions that we like to make and the decisions we don't like to make. And sometimes it's framing. Sometimes it's just setting up a system that makes sense. I mean, I often joke about this, how many people would save for retirement effectively if it didn't just come out of the paycheck, right, each time, right? Like we
Yeah.
know that automating that is a big way to get people to save for their retirement. And so it's not very hard to extend that to charity. But
Yeah.
you're correct. Most financial advisors still today don't have charitable giving as one of the financial goals that they talk to their clients about. But what I found at conferences is when you bring up the subject, most financial advisors go like, that's a good point. I
Yeah.
should be talking about it. Like this is a goal that people put hundreds or thousands or even more dollars against. That should be part of your plan. That should be part of your budget.
Yeah. Well, look, to some extent, the conversation for almost every financial advisor out there with their clients exists in the context of what's the legacy you want to leave, right? Like, so when you're done, how much money do you want to leave for your heirs, for charities, for whatever that type of stuff is. So there's usually some discussion of legacy, but to your point, it's not overly formalized in terms of like giving now while you're still here. And we know that people are doing it and it's important to them, but there's less of a conversation around how does the advisor get involved with that. And it's interesting, Hannah Rausch, who actually connected the two of us and helped coordinate this recording, was, by the way, props to Hannah because she's one of the best coordinators. I really like to sing these people's props with it, because here's the thing: she sent over actually some supporting links and so forth. Like, that is so helpful. Thank you for helping me do, because I always do research. I never have anybody on the show without actually doing a little bit of tinkering around, but it makes it helpful when somebody else sends over the stuff like, read this, look at this. So anyways, she sent over a few links. One of them is daffy.org/advisors, and we'll get this stuff linked up in the show notes for this. But it has some fantastic data points. Like, for instance, 75% of high net worth millennials and 80% of Gen Xers have a charitable giving strategy in their minds, right? And being the nerd that I am, I'm like, okay, well, where'd this data come from? I see the footnote. I go down, I click on the link, and I'm like, oh, no way. This is okay. BNY Mellon charitable giving study. And I couldn't resist. I had to just kind of nerd out and go through some stuff. But one of the things that jumped out to me, and this really supports what you were talking about, was that 62% of investors agree that it's important for their wealth advisor to understand their values. And that number spikes up to 75% when you get into high net worth clients that have 25 million or more in AUM. And it seems to me that this concept of a wealth advisor understanding a client's values and creating a plan for the client to actualize on those values is really the true essence of what advisors should seek to deliver for their clients. So it appears that that's at the heart of what's driving you and the team at Daffy as well.
Yeah, I love that you flag it. It's something I think about a lot. So, one of the great things about running Daffy, and sorry for anyone listening, Daffy is just the donor advised fund for you. It turns
Yeah.
out if you have an engineer come up with the name, it's kind of right on the nose. It's just, you get what you get.
It
So,
definitely gets your attention, by the way, because you
yeah.
can't help but ask, what is Daffy? So it
Yeah.
actually is a great conversation starter. It's great.
Yeah, it's good. We thought it was a good app name too. We were the first donor advised fund in the App Store because we were trying to hit a broader audience. And I'm used to this because, financial advice, it depends on the age and where in life your clients are. You always have to meet them where they are. And I think historically, philanthropy has been thought of as something that people do once they're retired. And,
Yeah.
if you have older clients who are nearing retirement, maybe they're baby boomers, maybe Gen X is getting older there, obviously having a product like Daffy where we have family plans, you can include your children, grandchildren,
Yeah.
siblings, et cetera, can be a wonderful thing. But there's a lot of advisors who are trying to connect with younger clients, and this is both on the acquisition side when you're trying to get that client, as well as that ongoing relationship to make sure that you stick with them over time. And yes, talking about values matters. And
Yeah.
these generations care. They care about causes, they care about organizations. They may not all care about the same causes and the same
That's
organizations,
right.
but I guarantee you they probably care about something, even if it's as simple as their children's education, right?
Yeah.
And supporting the schools that they go to. Even if it's as simple as a community center, their alma mater, it could be a religious institution, but most households end up having 3 to 6 organizations that they support. And by the way, not just one off, that they support on an ongoing basis. And so, yeah, if you miss the opportunity to talk to your clients about this, you miss that chance for not just a personal connection,
Mm.
but the kind of trust that you need, that when you're giving them about advice in general, that they know they can trust you, that you're coming
Yeah.
from the right place, right? They want to tell you what they care about because they know that if they can trust you with that, then when you are giving them advice about almost anything, that you have that level of relationship. And so I think it's a wonderful experience for the advisors who do it.
I could not agree more. And there's so many benefits under the surface there. And I love that you hit on trust, right? And connecting with their values, because it's really funny. We've been on a tear lately. Like several of the last guests we've had, Nicholas Rambis from Hush, Andrew Kroll from DA Davidson, and Peter Kroll from Earth Equity Advisors, really leaned into this concept of financial advice being about a client's values and connections with the wider family, as you just mentioned, is being a core thing that advisors can do. And you talked about this, during just now and during our prep call, that it's a great way to connect with the children and the grandchildren of your clients, which is something that every individual advisor and wealth management firm worth their salt is really looking for opportunities for, like, how do I connect with the next generation, right?
Yeah, this
And
is this is the hard part is I think everyone's identified that problem,
yeah,
right? Like it's not surprising that clients care about their legacy, that they care about
yeah,
their children and grandchildren. I mean, they're not always easy. I have 4 children. I know that they're not always easy, but you care about them a lot and you
for
care
sure.
about what you're teaching them, what you're instilling in them. And for a lot of people, actually, philanthropy overlaps with that quite a bit. The organizations they support, the causes aren't just about themselves. If you talk to clients who have children or grandchildren, that's not something they're waiting for estate planning to do. They want to do that now. They want to do that while they have their attention. And amazingly, though, the industry, there's been so little innovation, right? You go to Fidelity, you go to Schwab, you go to Vanguard, the donor advised funds just look like financial accounts. It's like, do you want an individual account or a joint account? Maybe get
Yeah.
fancy and do a trust account. But yeah, actually, we were the first donor advised fund. We rolled out the family plan on our 1 year anniversary. This is, more than a year ago. And not surprisingly, it was very popular. We made it very broad. You can add up to 24 people on your account. And as a parent, I can tell you, we modeled it after other technology products because there wasn't something in the space. And as a parent of teenagers, you get a lot of these requests,
Yeah.
iTunes requests, Amazon requests, Xbox requests. I get a lot of
Netflix.
requests.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're all
Netflix.
there.
Everyone has a family plan in tech. No one in this space does, but we made it easy. And so I have all my children on the Daffy family plan. And so two wonderful things happen from that. One is every time we make a donation, they get a little alert on their device. And I know that sounds simple and trivial, but actually, it turns out that communicating with young people is not as easy as you think. And surprisingly, an alert on their device gets their attention. And so, for example, like one organization, my wife and I have always supported it. It's a local Bay Area thing in Silicon Valley, but we've always supported the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Wonderful facility, ocean health, the environment, take the kids. But it wasn't until we added our children to the family plan that when we made our annual donation, they got this alert. How long? At dinner, just dinner time conversation.
Yeah.
They're like, I saw that we gave money to the Monterey Bay Aquarium. I didn't realize that we support that. We haven't gone this year. Like, when's the next time we're going to go? Why do we support it? These are all conversations that parents and grandparents want to have with their families to instill certain values about why you give, who you give to. And it's been phenomenal. And then, of course, if they want to recommend a donation, let's say they hear about an organization at school or from their friends or in some other program they're in, they can actually make a recommendation for a donation. And then my wife and I can look at that and we can either approve it, we can modify it,
Yeah.
but most importantly, we can talk to them about it. And I think that's what we're seeing from our members in terms of the big value that having a system around giving, a system around charitable giving that embraces the family and multiple generations.
I love that so much. And it's, as a dad of two, and one's a college student and one's a high school student, sometimes, the dinner table conversations, you just want to have a dinner table conversation, right? You want to have something to talk about, instead of other than work or, you can only ask how was school so many times. You got to get specific with it. And so if you can have the aquarium conversation about supporting the aquarium or another cause, it can really lead to some vibrant and exciting connecting conversations, right? There's more than just kind of the fluff of like, yeah, it was fine. And the other thing is, I think for those of us in the affluent and high net worth ecosystem, I think making sure that the next generation understands the impact of money, the positive impact that having money can have on the world, is really important. That it's not just money for spending and going out there and partying or whatever, that you as a young person or as a young adult, can really start to think about what can you do with your money and with the impact you can have on the world.
I couldn't agree more. And that's what I hear from people when they're talking about money. It's not really about the money itself or the mechanics, etc. It's about living your life and a healthy life. And a healthy financial life is part of that. But when I did those interviews, like I said, before we wrote a line of code for what became Daffy, the original interviews talked to people across the country about their giving. And listen, everyone has a different background. There are so many different cultures in the world, different places people are from, different family stories. But one thing that was very obvious to me in talking to people was that it's almost universal. Every culture, every religion, every community has something
Mm,
grounding them around the idea that life was not meant to be purely selfish, right? That there's ups and downs, but that there's other people out there who are less fortunate than yourself. And in general, it's not all for you, right? Like
yeah.
you have almost, I don't want to say an obligation. Some people do believe it's an obligation, but at minimum, there's this reality that your money can do more than just buy things for kind of superficial needs. And it's not surprising to me that people, especially people who have been successful, people who have families, and like I said, it doesn't have to be children. We've had members do this with their siblings, their
Yeah.
nieces and nephews, right? We've actually had members do this with their parents. They've been successful and
Interesting.
they want to
Oh,
involve their
okay.
parents in family giving. But like you said, this is all about real human conversations and putting a system in place so that actually the things you care about happen. That was the biggest surprise to me talking to people about their giving. was just how many people intended to give and support organizations, but just didn't get around to it.
Yeah.
They just, life is busy. They have work, they have family, social life, you name it, things happen. And they were disappointed that they hadn't done as much as that they had wanted to. And that's why I say, like, as a technology provider, something like Daffy, that's why I say, listen, we have spent the last 15 years building apps and services to make it easier to spend better, save better, invest better. So much investment by this whole industry to help people financially. If we can do that, if Robinhood can make it fun to buy stocks and crypto,
Yeah.
if Acorns, I was on the board of Acorns, if Acorns can help millions of people get started in kind of a healthy financial life by saving
Yeah.
their spare change, etc., we can do the same thing for giving. We can make it fun and easy for people to get started giving the way they want to give.
Yeah.
And, we do all the fun stuff. Like, it's, Apple Health, might reward you for getting 10,000 steps. In the Daffy app, that app, rewards you every time you give and you hit your giving goal for the year. And then it nudges you to give a little bit more.
Love it.
So
It's interesting that you said, that some, people always kind of get to oftentimes get to a point where they're like, I wish I'd given more. And I can speak from my own personal experience, and I would assume many others are the same. You give when you're asked, when you're presented with the opportunity. Oftentimes somebody comes to you. I'll use an example. My daughter's in the high school band. Band is very important, so we donate a lot of money to the band, and it supports not only the band's competition endeavors and so forth, but it also provides scholarships to the kids who, like, it might be a little too expensive for some of the instruments and the band trips and all that type of stuff, which is really neat. But you had to be asked, right? Obviously, but it's true for a lot of other financial goals. And that's why a financial advisor is so important for a client's life. There's a regularly scheduled conversation with a person who is helping you, navigate your financial life. So I think we should shift gears to talking a little bit about how financial advisors can use Daffy with their clients. And it's funny, during our prep call, one of the funniest things happened in a long time. I started talking about, I know this is going to be an elephant in the room question for many of the advisors in the audience, because they are going to ask, how do I incorporate this in my business? How does this integrate with my tech stack and all that type of stuff? And you looked at me and go, did somebody prep you on this? You kind of have this deadpan look like, what's going on here? Have I been set up? I'm like, no, I assure you, I just like to nerd out on this stuff. And I just know I'm going to be asked these questions. So how does an advisor go about using Daffy with their clients, or clients using Daffy with their advisors, so that they can make sure that their charitable giving is on track and they're hitting their goals there?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And not surprising, a lot of our members had asked for features because a lot of our members have financial advisors. And we've been approached also by quite a few financial advisors. We even have financial advisors now who've decided to license Daffy for their entire firm, right? Daffy's so inexpensive. They just want to make it so they can say, hey, one of the perks of being a client of our firm is you get access to Daffy for free. And the reason they love Daffy, first and foremost, was the technology and the flexibility, because a lot of the donor advised fund platforms are so primitive and difficult to use that, guess what? The client ends up emailing you to do something for them. Can you make a donation for us out of the right account, instead of just doing it themselves? And that's really something that actually is more rewarding, I think, for the client to do. But last year, we actually announced an addition of a number of advisor features. So because we had released the family plan, we had already built multi-user support into the system, people with different permissions.
Makes sense.
And so now at Daffy, you can add up to 3 people from an advisory team onto your account. It's still your account, your donor advised fund, but the advisors can now perform financial actions on your behalf. Right. So if you need them to schedule a contribution or make a donation or something like that, you can do it. And that's been very popular. And by the way, an advisor, when they log into Daffy, if they have clients, 10 different clients with Daffy accounts, they can easily flip between them. It's very easy to do.
That's awesome.
But also, we rolled out our API platform. And I realize that most financial advisors don't have a technology team necessarily to do all the integration themselves. But one of the reasons we rolled out the API platform is to allow for those technology integrations to happen. And that's also been a very exciting thing to watch. We even saw someone build a Slack bot. One of
Oh,
our features at Daffy, it's actually one of these fun things. You build new features. One of the features we built at Daffy for the holiday season last year, or actually I think it's 2 years ago, was the ability to send gift cards, right? So you have a donor advised fund. Let's say you have $10,000 put aside for charity, and you want to give a gift of, $100 to give to the charity of your choice. So we actually implemented that as a simple link. So you can go in
nice.
and say, oh, I want to send a gift. You enter their email address, the amount. They get a link. They can pick any charity that's legal in the US they want to give to. It comes in, you approve it. It is your donor advised fund, and then the money goes off. And so it turns out someone used our API to build a Slack bot so that managers can reward their employees, right? The
Yeah,
engineer who squashed the most bugs this week can get a gift card to give $100 to the charity of their choice.
that's cool. That's a smart
So,
idea.
but yeah, so I think that a lot of advisors, the biggest thing the biggest thing I tell advisors about how to incorporate into their practice, though, isn't about technology. And I love the product. I love the app. I think it's fantastic. Download it, use it, you'll love it. But it's actually back to that basics of financial goals, right? The
Yeah.
problem with giving for most people is that it involves two hard problems for them. One is, how much can I afford to give?
Mm,
And the second is, who do I give it to? And to your point, it mostly happens when people ask, right?
yeah,
People ask you to give and you're inspired. You actually like the organization. You like the person asking. You want to give. But that first problem is a lot of friction, right? If that's
yeah,
not in your budget, if you don't have money put aside, it makes you almost inherently less generous than you want to be.
for sure.
And we learned this in e-commerce years ago. This is one of the reasons PayPal was such a big boon to eBay back in the day. Is it turns out people shop more when they have a little bit of money in this slush fund to buy
Yeah,
stuff online. Having a separate account for charity means that when you open up that app, someone asks you to give, and you have that there, you have that power. And so for financial advisors, I just encourage them to talk to their clients, right?
yeah.
Do you give to charity every year? Oh, what charities did you give to? That sort of thing. Then it allows you to follow on conversations about how to hit that goal,
Yeah.
which can be as simple as putting money aside. We let people put money aside every week or every month. We'll pull money out of their bank account. But it allows you to talk about more sophisticated things like donating stock, ETFs, mutual funds. We even accept crypto, right? If you hold assets that have you for more than a year, you can avoid all of those capital gains taxes and get the full charitable deduction. And so I think that this bridges into an area where financial advisors start with something very human and basic for the clients, but then get into some real dollars and cents value add that they can provide.
That's fantastic. It's funny. I had teed up, and you just answered so much of it, so it would feel guilty asking it. But I had teed up this question about like how do advisors go about pitching this to their clients or presenting this to their clients? Because one of the things we've discovered over the years is so if advisors are great when they're given content, you know what I mean? Because a lot of them have their roots as salespeople, right? And that's not to besmirch the advisors. Just that's how they tell me how this product works. Tell me the values of why somebody wants to buy this. I got it from here once you tell me. So I guess I'll reframe the question. Maybe it's like, what type of support does Daffy offer, or content do you offer for advisors so they can learn more about it and feel like they are more confident in walking through this process with their clients, because I just know that's something that's really going to be helpful for them.
Yeah, so we actually invest quite a bit in content as well as tools that can be used by advisors with their clients. Some of the work that advisors do with clients, though, they're already well educated
Yeah,
and good at. So, for example, the basic idea of if you're walking through a client's spending for the last year, it's so easy to note the charitable
yeah,
donations.
sure,
And are they deducting them on their taxes? Are they using strategies like bunching? Or more importantly, are you making these donations with cash? We probably could actually save you quite a bit of money if you make them with assets like stock or ETFs. So I think some of that advisors can just do. But in terms of tools, we have a whole range of content on all of these topics.
yeah,
I find that advisors really appreciate that because you can always tell your client, but if you can send them a link
yeah,
from a vetted organization, a high quality organization focused, it always goes a little bit further
for
than just your
sure.
word and pressing it. So we provide a lot of content. But what's been very exciting the last year is we provided some unique tools. We looked for it ourselves. We were looking online. Is there a simple tool that I can send someone where they can put in, what stock they own or what ETF, what they bought it at and how much they would save on taxes by donating that? We couldn't find it.
Hmm.
Right. And most advisors are reticent to kind of give direct tax advice for very good regulatory reasons. And so we built those tools, right? So we have a tool. If you have a client who you're talking to about donating stock or ETFs or mutual funds, simple tool where you can pick any security, put in the cost basis of where you bought it and date, and has a gorgeous chart. By the way, you can do this for your client and send them a screenshot of the chart. You can even send them the URL so they can play with themselves. We have a similar one for crypto. Of course, self-serving a little bit, we also have one for donor advised fund fees, which has turned out to be a very popular calculator.
I'll bet it did.
If you have a client who already has a donor advised fund, showing them how much money they could save by moving to Daffy is another easy value add.
Yeah.
But we actually really like this because for us, it's exactly what you said. Whether it's content or whether it's tools to play with, we're trying to help people have these conversations and more importantly, understand the value of having a donor advised fund can create both from a financial standpoint, taxes, et cetera, but also in terms of their financial life. A lot of clients, they have a lot of anxiety for some reason about finding their donation receipts. And so it turns out just giving them a single place where they can do all of their charitable giving just has value by itself. And I've seen actually clients really reward advisors just for the referral of saying, oh, I checked this out. This is fantastic. I had not heard of this before, right? All of that value add can accrue to you if you're the one recommending it.
That's awesome. That's all. It's interesting. You talk about like some advisors are hesitant to, give specific tax advice. And that's probably very true. But every financial advisor is almost certainly having a conversation about tax loss harvesting at some point in time with their client, right? And so why not have a tax gain direction? Right? Of like, if we're talking about tax loss harvesting so that I could roll some of those losses over and to take advantage of it and lower my taxable income, why not, also have a conversation about, hey, listen, if you're thinking about making charitable donations next year here in the next few years, let's have a conversation about where that money comes from, because you can have a much bigger impact by donating something that you might have a huge gain on, right? Versus it's just a smart conversation to have.
And it actually works in both directions. And you have to understand, I love that you're asking this question, Mike, but I mean, if people don't know, I was the CEO of Wealthfront for 4 years, and I was very proud.
I was going to tee that up in the intro, but that's okay. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's fine. I was very proud of the innovation. We brought ETF level tax loss harvesting to a lot of people who'd never heard of it before. We rolled out direct indexing in 2013. I was very proud of that as well, and that's become big in the industry. So you have to know that I'm someone who actually cares about tax efficient strategies and is used to talking to very broad audiences about that. But there's always that question, which is, well, doesn't this mean that I'm going to be accumulating shares that have a low cost basis? What do I do with those? What happens when I have to sell those? And the truth is, this gives you an answer to that question, which was always the answer is like, maybe you'll donate them, right? There's amazing advantages. Now, donating stock or ETFs or mutual funds to charities turns out to be very difficult, because there's over 1.5 million charities in the US, and very, very few of them have the technical or financial sophistication to accept stock or ETFs or mutual funds. But that's why a platform like Daffy makes perfect sense. A donor advised fund solves that problem because we can take everything.
Yeah.
Right? Like we can take everything. You figure out the right shares, the right tax lot, that sort of thing. You send it to us, and then we'll get cash to the organization, to the charity. Any legal charity in the US is supported. And so that's very easy. Interestingly, at one of the advisor conferences I went to last year, an advisor told me a story that I hadn't thought of, but they had a problem with their clients, usually with large concentrated positions, right? They invested in something early and it had done well. We can pick our favorite stock, crypto, whatever you want, something out there. And you're sitting there with a client that has too much of their net worth in a concentrated position in a single investment. And it's so hard to help clients navigate that because let's face it, that position was a winning position for them.
Yeah.
Like they're not feeling bad about that investment. And there's a bias in there. They don't really want to sell it. They don't like the idea of taxes.
Yeah.
They also don't like getting rid of it. And so it's always a hard conversation. How do you do this? And I'm sure a lot of different advisors have great ways of doing this. I had some ways of doing this previous roles, but I hadn't thought about it. But it turns out this is that answer, which is like, hey, why don't you take some of that? You already give this amount to charity every year.
Right.
If you take some of that concentrated position and put it in a donor advised fund, you'll never pay the capital gains taxes. You'll get a great tax deduction, which, by the way, can work against selling some more of that position. So you don't have to worry
Right.
about the taxes there. And now your charitable giving for the next 5 to 10 years might be taken care of. It's a real winning conversation to have with clients.
100%. It so is. And this is the kind of the dream conversation that advisors like having with their clients, right? It is that, you know, we're not even, we're not delving into, all these market performance stuff and minutia of things. We're talking about the things you care about, right? Because anybody can show you the report, like, hey, here's how your portfolio is done over the last quarter or whatever. And that, great. I need something more vibrant to talk about with you to make sure that we continue to have a fantastic relationship that hopefully grows and expands over time to include other members of the family and so forth. One of my favorite questions to ask somebody as we near the end of our conversation is, especially when I'm talking to a founder of a company, I always like to ask, like, what surprised you so far, right? What has been the thing you didn't see coming? And that could be positive or negative. And in this case, I like to ask that question, but I also want to kind of add on, like, what's been an unexpected benefit, like a surprising benefit of Daffy that you just didn't see coming? Like this is gonna be great. We're gonna kind of revolutionize charitable donor advised funds, excuse me. But there must be something where you're like, wow, that surprised you even.
Oh, well, I mean, there's been so many pleasant surprises, and I think it has to do with being in this sector. I mean, I've been in a lot of technology businesses,
Yeah.
right? And like my first job at a school was at Apple. Apple fighting with Microsoft in my day
Yeah.
was like big tussle, that sort of thing. eBay fighting with Amazon,
Yeah.
LinkedIn. Yeah. Hey, in technology, you tend to have a lot of competition, especially in the early days as a startup, et cetera. One of the things that's been pleasantly surprised about being in this industry and focusing on giving is actually how supportive other existing donor advised funds have been about us. I've had employees and executives at some of the largest donor advised funds in the world come and basically tell us that we're so excited about what you're doing. You're proving that these features can work, that these capabilities matter. And they always say that they've been trying to convince their boss for 10 or 20 years to build something like this. And so they're happy to do it.
Yeah.
But I think that, for me, the biggest motivation happens, excitement is because you don't know, you build these capabilities and you don't know what people are going to ask for. I mean, two of
Yeah.
our most exciting new features, innovative features, are things that we didn't set out to build, but came as requests from our members, right? So we
Interesting.
have a workplace product called Daffy for Work, where if you join a company, like right now, if you joined, I mean, OpenAI is a hot company, Acorns
Yeah.
is a hot company. If you join those companies, they will tell you that because you're an employee, you get a 401k and you get some match there. And by the way, you get a charitable account, with Daffy, and they'll match the first $500 that you put aside for charity. We didn't set out to build that feature. One
Yeah.
of our members who owned a business of about 100 employees asked us to build it for them. And actually, we thought it was a great idea. Like, what if charitable giving was integrated in the workplace? What if it wasn't donation matching? What if it wasn't this terrible expense matching? What if it was like a 401k, just
Yeah.
matching contributions? So much easier. And that keeps happening to us. We had a member who had a family member who had passed away years ago, had been a teacher, and wanted to raise money for them, like a scholarship in their name.
Yeah.
And we figured out some way to help support them. They were running a campaign. We said, why not build this into a donor advised fund? What if every member at Daffy could run a matching campaign for any charity they wanted to? So instead of donating $10,000 to a charity, they could say, I'll match dollar for dollar anyone who gives up to $10,000. And so we launched this last November. And it's been amazingly successful because it
I
turns
love
out
that.
for a lot of people, it's what you said earlier in this conversation. Most people don't give until they're asked.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people see impact. Listen, I have this money in this donor advised fund. I could give money to the organization or I could encourage others to give.
Right.
And so it's just such an exciting thing. But for me, I'm a product guy. I my entire career, going back to school, graduate degree, that sort of thing, has been not just technology, but how do we use technology to solve real human problems, like problems we have in our lives. And giving has been such a rewarding space because the truth is, there are so many ideas out there about better ways to give that just haven't had a technology platform that was willing to build them. And so it's been rewarding for me every day, every week, every month. I feel like I'm learning something new about the way people give. And it
Yeah.
begs the question, how can we make our product better by adding it in?
I love it. I love it. By the way, I'm glad you covered the matching thing because I wanted to ask that question, but I'm always reluctant. Well, I shouldn't be reluctant, but sometimes people are like, I don't know if this exists in the product. And I hate to ask about a feature that I think should exist, but might not exist. But the matching thing, like a lot of large companies have a charitable match for whatever. And all you have to do is submit your receipt to the company, like, hey, I donated X much to the library or to whatever. And so on. But having it actually integrated, like it's a legitimate formal benefit, and they can see that the charitable donation happened and the match happens is really brilliant. Love it.
Yeah, no, and we got some attention for this because we had been doing it for our members who asked, a few companies
Yeah.
here and there, but we got enough requests. We said, okay, we're going to launch this as a real feature. And so we actually launched it last year in July, and we announced some of the early companies using it. But we tried to make it easy because a lot of the companies that want to use this, actually, we have financial advisory firms using the Daffy for Workplace product, not for their clients, but for themselves,
Yeah.
because it is a much better system. And we try to make it easy. If you go to Daffy for Work, as long as you have a corporate card, you're going to link a bank account, you can get it set up in less than 24 hours. Like literally, it takes minutes. And it's a really simple product, but it's a way, if your company cares about its culture, if it cares about giving, it cares about its stakeholders, the community it's in, it's so useful to have a benefit like this. But
For sure.
like I said, like I can't take full credit for the feature. Alejandro, my co-founder, can't take full credit for the feature because some of these ideas really come from our members coming in and saying, it would be a great idea, this. And it's wonderful. One of the best things about being a startup is actually you have the power to say yes.
That's awesome.
Right, to actually do it and ship it and not say, oh, this will be in the future, 10 years from now.
Right.
Someday.
Yeah. You're still at that time where you can move really quick, right?
That's right.
I love it. I have some features I'd love to suggest to you. We'll get them offline. I do. As I'm sitting there, we're like, oh, there was a solution I used to use and it's since been deprecated on another platform. I'm like, maybe I could, talk to Adam about it. It'd be great. So anyway, this has been fantastic. So people can learn more. Obviously, we'll have some things linked up in the show notes, but daffy.org. You're also, I see you on LinkedIn. I assume you're active other places. Where else can people learn more about the stuff you do and follow along and get smarter about giving?
Well, listen, the best resource, of course, is daffy.org.
Yeah.
There's an entire menu there of resources, all those content, all those tools. We write regularly. I think, bookmarking that, having access to that, fantastic. Of course, if you sign up for an account, you'll get the emails anyway. So that's all great. But, in terms of following me, I try to be very easy to follow. I have different parts of my life, but, obviously very active on Twitter, just Adam Nash. LinkedIn, I ran product there for a number of years. I'm still very active on LinkedIn, of course. And I also actually have content around personal finance up. I do teach a class at Stanford, personal finance for engineers, and I post that up on a website as well. So happy to share all those URLs with you for your audience to follow up on if they're interested.
Sounds fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been really eye-opening and exciting. I'm so glad that Hannah reached out and connected us.
No, fantastic. It was great to be here.
Cool. Thank you very much for listening to and/or watching this episode of the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. It's always fantastic to have you with us. Huge props to my man, Adam Nash, for coming on the show. Love hearing what he's working on. It's really neat when you meet somebody like Adam who's doing things that are, kind of moonshotty like projects. These big, audacious projects that have the opportunity to make a huge impact in the world. And I just had never heard of Adam, which is kind of preposterous that, he was a CEO of Wealthfront. And I don't know, I just never thought about who's the CEO of Wealthfront, right? And here you go. Get a chance to talk to him. He brought all the awesomeness to the show. Very generous with his time and insight. And I really love what they're working on. And I hope you do as well. Hopefully you bring it to your clients and it makes an impact on their lives and by extension, an impact on the world. All right. As I mentioned at the top of the show, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform and make sure you're being nice to each other. We'll see you next time on the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast. See ya. Bye.